25th, 2023. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our superintendent's report is next.
Good evening, thank you. So, as the board is aware, we just met last week. It's a one time all year where we meet on a Tuesday and where we meet kind of back-to-back weeks as we're required to have the BOCES vote. So all the districts in the BOCES are meeting today. So due to that, we have a short report and a short video. So two things I wanted to bring to the attention of the board, something I know that we have talked a lot about, including our Every Student Every Day plan, which is our universal pre-kindergarten program. That's state funding. We started it this year. It's our first year. And as you can see there, we have 56 applicants for next year's program. We recently held a lottery, and when we did, we thought we had 33 spots available. However, after we notified families, we got some good news. Our one community partner right now, which is St. Jude's, we're able to open up 14 additional spots. So right now, as the way things stand, 47 of our 56 applicants are going to have a spot in the program next year. So that's good. That's a great improvement, especially considering if you go back even just 2 years, we had none. This year we started it. So that's something that is moving in the right direction. Again, we'd like to have more community partners. We've been trying to. The funding mechanism from the state could be a little bit better there for those private or partners to be able to break even. That's out of our control. And from a taxpayer point of view, remember, this is money that is set aside, so it's not part of our foundation aid or our state aid. It's part of our state aid, but it can only be used for UPK. So it's either a use it or lose it proposition. So we're happy that we're using more of it, and thanks St. Jude's for the partnership. And then secondly, the Meet the Candidate tonight has been officially announced, 7 o'clock, May 9th. It'll be right here in the LGI. And we're going to stick with the same format we've been using. Brian Radowitz, our communication specialist, will moderate it. And we have 2 open seats and 2 people are running. That's Michelle Ruffalo and Jessica DiFiore. So we are set now for that and are excited about that night with the official vote 1 week later. That is a very short report since we just met and a rather short video this week, about a minute or so. So thanks again to Brian Radowitz for the video, and that includes, I think, a record short superintendent's report.
Record short, but still a lot going on in that week. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Thank you. That leads us to item number 3, a discussion regards to the Warrior name and the Board of Regents ruling to prohibit New York school districts in New York State from using indigenous names, logos, and mascots. I'm going to turn this part over to Jim to start.
Great, thank you. So as the board knows, we've been following this very closely. Right, we know that the State Education Department came out with a ruling this year saying that we had to move to remove any indigenous names, mascots, and imagery. When we first heard this, we really took a wait-and-see approach, which I think we learned from many examples. That's usually the best thing because these announcements come out, then some form of guidance, some frequently asked question type. So there's some steps that happen. So we've been watching it closely. We've taken some steps. We've done an audit to see what we have, where we stand. We were given word that the name Warrior would be okay, that we just needed to move the spear of the feather. That's what we've been under that pretense now for a little while. We know it would cost us about $10,000 to do that. The most prominent example is obviously a football helmet, but it is in some other places. Recently, the Board of Regents voted unanimously, without discussion, to put Warrior in the category of names that had to be removed if there's any if there's any past history tying it to Indigenous names. So as you know, we talked about it here as a discussion, and at that point, we felt we were moving towards a resolution where we were going to move to removing the spear and the feather, but keep the name. The situation has changed a little bit, so we're bringing it back to the board to give you a chance to get some information, have a discussion, and part of that is we have Jeff with us here now. Jeff Honeywell is our attorney. He's been following it extremely closely, represents many districts, and has a great deal of experience with this. So Jeff is going to provide you some more context, and then looking to have a discussion with the board. We set a public comment to be right after this, so the public can weigh in. I think, Jesse, you're going to talk a little bit about the feedback we've received so far, and we'll kind of go from there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Franchitti. And so I'm just going to provide some background for the members of the audience and the board. We've been pretty deeply involved in this issue as a law firm. I'm actually going to go back to 2001. Don't worry, I quickly move forward. But back in 2001, former Commissioner Mills, Commissioner of Education, issued a memo to all school districts in which he suggested, perhaps strongly, but suggested that school districts re-examine the use of Native American mascots, imagery, etc., but did not require that. It kind of died, quite frankly, at that point. There have been very few commissioner decisions dealing with what mascot or nickname a district might elect. And those couple of decisions up until recently basically deferred to local boards of education to make those decisions. I would actually note that one of them was a challenge to East Greenbush using Blue Devils because that was satanic in nature. They lost that challenge as well. But fast forward to a couple of years ago, one of our other clients is Cambridge School District in Washington County. You may have read about it in the news. They used to be the Cambridge Indians. And this is all pre-regulation, which I'm going to talk about in a second. The Board of Education, after a lengthy review, at first voted to get rid of the Indians mascot and imagery. And then a subsequent board voted pretty quickly thereafter to reinstate the Indians mascot and imagery. It was a very divisive issue in the community. That board decision was appealed to Commissioner Rosa, the current commissioner, who is a very different type of commissioner that we've experienced in a while. And the challenge was that the Board of Education should not be allowed to have to maintain the Indians mascot logo. And the commissioner ruled in favor of the challenge, saying, nope, the district cannot have that. You need to pick something else. I'm paraphrasing. On behalf of the district, we appealed to the first level of court in New York State, and the court upheld the commissioner's decision, basically said it was not contrary to law. That's her decision. She can make it. Our key argument had been at the time that the commissioner was without the legal authority to make that decision. That's why I stressed that was pre-regulation. So now move it forward to now, the Board of Regents just approved a new regulation. In our world, you have laws, then regulations are right below them, that prohibits the use of indigenous people's mascots and imagery of any public school in New York State, except for educational purposes. And then another interesting exception is unless it is in your name as a school district or a school building name. For example, Shenandoah Central School District is a Native American name, and all of their buildings are named in a Native American format. But they have prohibited any indigenous name, logo, or mascot, which means any name, symbol, or image that depicts or refers to indigenous persons, tribes, nations, individuals, customs, symbols, or traditions, including actual or stereotypical aspects of indigenous cultures. As Dr. Franchini said, we were all this was announced as a potential regulation last December-ish, following a memo from the State Education Department, again, strongly indicating that the stance of SED was going to be to prohibit such names and imagery. The regulation was proposed, it was just adopted by the Board of Regents, ironically with little to no discussion by the Board of Regents. We are told that there will be some guidance forthcoming. Up until the regulation was adopted, we were getting everything's political in New York State, folks. We were getting some signals that names such as Warriors, I have another client who are the Braves, might not be subject to being prohibited depending on certain factors. However, the recent strong indications are that if those names have any association with or have been developed as associated with a Native American indigenous culture, they are likely not going to stand the test of the new regulation. So that's where everything is from a process point of view. Every board with a name that is of concern has to act no later than June 30th to indicate what its intent is. And then it does have actually 2 years to implement a plan to replace the name and or imagery. And as you might imagine, I don't think this is the case here in Averill Park, but we have clients where their Native American imagery is actually embedded in their gym floors and on their football fields, and there's a fair amount involved in changing those, not the least of which is money, which I do not believe State Ed intends to provide. So as you might imagine, there's a little bit of bias in my report here, but that's where things are.
I have a quick question. You had mentioned they're going to provide guidance. Is that going to come before the June deadline?
It's to be issued shortly,
Okay.
whatever that means in SED speak. I do believe it will be forthcoming in the next couple of 3 weeks. I really do. And there's really no surprise what it's going to say. So, and I guess one other piece, Justin, that's a good question. In January, the State Education Department had convened a committee with several Native American indigenous personnel represented on the committee to look at the issue of warriors and braves and so forth. Another fun fact, the Cambridge board that voted to keep the Indians mascot, one of them who voted in favor was actually Native American himself and of the same indigenous group from the Washington County area. The commissioner was not overwhelmed with that fact. So thank you. Any other questions?
We might as we go along, but I think I want to make sure everybody on the board has a chance to kind of weigh in on this. So I don't care how we go, but Megan, you sort of raised your hand and make sure everybody gets a chance.
I'm prepared to defer. Can I speak first?
Can someone point me to the dictionary where the definition of warrior makes any reference to Indigenous people? Because the dictionary that I have shows the origin of the word warrior as Old French and the definition as a brave or experienced soldier or fighter.
I think the problem we have here is that we used to have an indigenous imagery and not just the spear and feather. We had, Mike can talk about this, I'm not sure who else in the room remembers, but it was a warrior, or indigenous person wearing a loincloth with a big nose and feather.
Am I
That was our-
correct that that imagery has already been
It
removed
has
and
been,
hasn't been
but
in use
it-
for many years?
Right, but the issue is it was ever referenced, as Jeff pointed out, and I think that's why we're here and trying to figure this out now, is because of that history. They said, if you've ever had it point to an indigenous person, you need to refrain. So I think that's why we're here. I completely agree with you. I'm just saying, I think that's why we're here.
I have some concerns,
In
but
terms of number, we approximate that mascot was last used around 1998. So about 25 years.
and none of the students currently present in our district or immediate past have any recollection or reference for that, other than none of them were even born at the last time that it was used. Okay. What are the consequences if we do not adopt the resolution?
If you are determined to have a mascot or imagery or name in violation of the regulation, the ultimate consequence could be withholding state aid and or removal of board members.
To be clear, I'm not opposing the removal of the imagery. Obviously, I would never intend to offend any Indigenous person. My issue is specifically with the name, because at the point where we start questioning every single, like, you're gonna just whip out a dictionary and say, okay, well, that word doesn't mean that anymore because someone somewhere used it in association with a similar term. If we start associating every emoji on our phone with, whatever slang usage, no one would ever be able to put, a vegetable emoji on anything anymore. I mean, legitimately, I'm trying to understand the relevance to the Board of Regents not actually being interested in us teaching actual history. They're not concerned with us teaching the reality of the historical content related to Indigenous people, but they're gonna spend time and resources and have us spend time and resources to remove a name with which our students and our community have always identified it as in a respectful way. We have always portrayed the warrior name as a symbol of people who stand up for the weak, who defend and act with honor, and who behave and we do the right thing because we are warriors. So I take personal offense to it, and I take offense on behalf of every student that gets up there, because they've applied this negative connotation to something that has never been a negative thing, and it's always been a prideful thing to be a warrior, because we stand up for people and we do the right thing and we hold ourselves with respect. I disagree with this, but I just want to be clear that we're being told that if we don't do this, that I personally could lose my seat and not be allowed to advocate for the children of this district, and that the district could lose funding. So what's the point in saying we have to adopt a resolution? We don't have a choice.
I think that's my thought is, as much as we can have an opinion, whatever our opinions are, it doesn't matter, because they're going to force us by withholding state aid,
Which they don't give us enough anyway.
which they don't give us enough anyway. So, we can all have different opinions, and I agree that the imagery needs to go. Fine. The word, I agree with you as well. I don't think it specifically implies any specific group. I get that there was negative imagery surrounded by that word in the past, but we need to move forward. And anyway, again, our hands are just tied, because they're gonna threaten us with withholding state aid, which is ridiculous. Thank you.
Jeff, I don't ever remember a situation where we had to vote on whether we're going to obey a regulation or not. That's basically what we're doing. We're going to pass or not pass a resolution that says, no, we're not going to obey a regulation. I cannot ever remember the Board of Regents putting that in front of us. Are you going to obey what we have ordered you to do? Do you?
First of all, I want to make clear, I'm not here defending anything state ed is doing, let me be real clear on that. Nor do I profess to actually fully understand why they do some things, so let's make that clear as well. I believe, Doug, that the reason why they are doing the resolution with deadlines is to make sure that the districts act in a timely manner. I have seen similar deadlines in terms of policies on DASA and so forth. So I've seen similar deadlines before, but I believe they just want to make sure that boards act and don't wait forever.
It just seems to me like we're leading people to believe, whether it be the residents or boards, that there's a choice in the matter. And there really isn't a choice in the matter. We don't want to lose funding. We don't want to lose. And by the way, it's not just our seats that are up for grabs by state ed. It could be superintendent, it could be other administrative officials who may not abide by this regulation. So we don't have a choice. We don't want to lose funding. We've already been underfunded by the state this year compared to other districts from state aid, grossly underfunded. We have to make massive cuts because of that underfunding. And now they're asking us to spend $10,000 to get rid of certain logos by a certain date. I know it's a long way off. What is it, 2 years, Jim? We have an opportunity to do that. It's still money right out of the taxpayers' pocket. I don't like it. And what if we voted no on our resolution and a majority of the board voted no? It's going to put a target on us, on our backs, correct?
Correct.
State ed?
Correct.
Wow. So what else are they going to go after in the district if we do that?
Well, I think it's primarily the funding and removal, and again, I can speak to Cambridge experience a little bit, all public information, nothing privileged that I'm sharing here. But the commissioner was very forceful in her language with the district and the superintendent of schools about their need to do what they needed to do forthwith, to use another term I like. But it involved state aid funding and removal. This is not a bashful commissioner, Tony.
Just one more thing. It's not $10,000. If we have to change the name, it is 6 figures worth of money. Am I correct about that?
was my question.
Yeah, at this point, quite honestly, we don't have a number, but yes, it'd be much greater than 10,000. 10,000 was simply, again, just the number one item was the helmets. We have to recondition those anyway every year, so that's part of that process. But it would be more expensive, obviously, because of the logo. And some other stuff. There's some banners, there's some signage. The Spear and Feather is on uniforms, not all of them, some, especially throughout the program for modified varsity. So that 10,000 is just for that. If you're removing the name Warrior, I at this point cannot even give you a number. You're
It's a lot
talking
of
gym
money.
floors, you're talking essentially every uniform, you're talking, yeah, I mean, a lot. A lot.
So that was actually one of my questions was, do we even have a remote sense? I just want to say, like, I get where this is coming from, but boy, there's a whole lot of nuance that's flying over people's heads in my opinion, and I agree that to sort of double speak of words not meaning what they mean. My question is there any kind of outlet? Is there any kind of appeals process? Is there anybody who can listen to letters, like canvassing, like the students, my daughter was like, well, what happens to Warrior Wednesdays if we're not Warriors? And I was like, I don't have anything quippy. I'm usually clever and I was not clever. Yeah. And so that would be my question. Is this just like, is the door slammed shut and that is that? Or is there, and Jeff, you don't answer this now and I don't want to talk out of turn, but that's, I mean, in a lot of things in life, there's some crack in the door
And again, I don't want to like offend anybody but to my reading, and this is what I ask my kids to do, is sort of, think in layers and be able to look at things and not in black and white. And so here we are at the other end of this stick of like having something be black and white and not allowing the district to have the opportunity to, I don't want to use the word redefine, but, reimagine the outward picture of warriors, right? For our kids, I think Megan described it really well. They internalize what it means to be a warrior. And, having the opportunity to say like, okay, there are all kinds of warriors, and we get that it was wrong back in the day. And that connection, it's not really there anymore. There's a thread, but we want to break that thread and make something new. Like, if there is a window, if there's a crack in the door, if there's an appeals process, I'd be interested to know, and obviously not necessarily tonight in this forum, or what have you, but I don't know. It seems crazy to me that it's just like door slam shut. Done. I don't want us to lose funding either. I'm already cranky for the foundation plan, so, which, but yeah, it's very frustrating. And the other thing I just wanted to was sort of to get in the communication, to see what communication 101 sort of, now it's this, now it's that, now it's done. It's not great management. I don't know how I feel about process. So, yeah, I mean, that, I don't want to lose funding, but I don't want to tell if there is a crack in the door somewhere.
Jeff, when you were talking, did I hear you say that the Board of Regents met with Indigenous people?
In January or so, a committee was formed by the commissioner that had Native American participants on it. The Board of Regents, to my knowledge, didn't meet with the committee. I don't know that for sure. They, however, did not have any comment when they approved the regulation. There was no discussion. So two separate things.
Thank you for that clarification. Since this came out in the news with Cambridge, and I saw that we were in a similar situation, I've been watching it closely and really trying to see all sides of this. I fully agree with Megan's definition. I mean, if we go by the strict definition of what a warrior is and what it means to the current population here, as well as, recent past alum, it's obvious that there's not an Indigenous element to the word warrior. I see that and I understand that. I also do understand the wait and see approach when it comes to SED, why we didn't jump on this, immediately, because we knew that the word warrior could have another connotation and we knew that it might change. So why make that expense ahead of time if we don't have to? So, on the other hand, for folks who are Indigenous or have a heritage thereof, I can also relate to, well, I can't relate to, but I can understand the connotation that's brought forth with the word warrior. It was the Indian symbol, it was the spear and feather, and whether we want to say that that's part of it or not, it has been brought up. So if we were to be able to fight this at no cost, of course, and say, okay, let's keep the warrior name, then another school district might say, well, then if you can keep warriors, then we can keep braves. And then if you can keep braves, then we can keep redskins, and it's like those small nuances. I think you gotta cut bait at a certain point. And though I agree, and I would love to keep the name warrior, I, with Doug, don't feel like we have any
say in it. If we do, I would, and it doesn't cost anything to appeal just the name, I'm all for that, and I think we should try to keep the name without the imagery, of course. But I think it's important for us as a community moving forward to try to be better people, to honor to own up and honor what we have done, and if we can undo some of the damage by changing our name, then I'm okay with that too. I think that's all.
And just a couple of comments, Ann, if I can, particularly in response to what Doug said. If I go way back to my college years, I can't remember whether it was government or philosophy, but what you have is a Hobbesian choice. I mean, it's really no choice at all. But also, Jim and I have obviously been talking about this since last fall. He's been very on top of it and had affirmative guidance in writing from an appropriate official that the name Warriors, as long as you got rid of imagery, was not going to be an issue. So up until the last 2 to 3 weeks, it was very appropriate for him to rely on that. So he's been advocating and representing you since last fall.
And we need that. Of course. So another problem that I have with this is that the message that we've been getting all along was that Warrior would be fine as long as we remove the imagery. Now the decision has morphed into, well, if there was any prior connotation, which I understand, and maybe my own introspection is, required, because I don't see that, and I have never seen that, and I'm not aware of any recent use of any inappropriate imagery. So maybe that's a me problem. I get it. But at what point then, what if the next commissioner comes along and goes, oh, well, the name wasn't enough. Now we have to change building names. Because we get these decisions and we're without options, and they're not going to provide any funding to comply with the decision. But it's always, based on the opinion of whoever is at the top. Well, the opinion of whoever's at the top right now is it's names and logos, but building names can stay. Okay, well, what happens when the next person comes along and, okay, well, now it's building names? Well, then we got to change a building name and literally take it out of the concrete. And what does that mean then? And the other part of the problem that I have with this is that I don't see how this action or this decision really addresses the underlying problems associated with racism and division and exclusion, and how Indigenous people have been and are treated in this country. Like, we're not teaching the reality of any of that history. We're just going to take the name off and move on. And I don't see how that's respectful or how that solves anything. I don't understand. I feel like it's arbitrary and I'm sorry, but disingenuous, and not even remotely even symbolic. And to appeal it is probably going to go nowhere, because they're going to do what they're going to do. We'll be punished if we don't comply.
And the courts have already decided.
Yeah.
Right, so going after it isn't productive. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
As the oldest living graduate of Averill Park High School. At least in the vicinity. I remember the image. I remember it quite distinctly, and frankly, it wasn't very complimentary to the Indigenous people. And I think the initiative of the Averill Park School District to get rid of it 20-something years ago, I think was foresighted. I think that they looked ahead, they saw it as something that was not respectful, and they got rid of it at that time. And I think we're at the forefront of that movement. This kind of clouds that movement, a little bit in my mind as well. And if the Board of Regents had attached, let's say, an improved curriculum that would teach us more about the indigenous people that lived in our area, or lived in New York State, in a different area, I might have a different opinion about it, but they don't. They skim over that topic. You can address it in the lower grades without paying as much attention as they've paid to this subject. That's just my opinion. But I remember that image, and it was not complimentary, and I'm glad previous boards got away with it. Did away with it, got rid of it.
Agreed.
Sometimes I like to add notes for context. The Cambridge board that voted to retain the Indians' name at the same time voted to direct to implement a Native American curriculum for the students in the school district. So they were thinking, in my personal opinion, in the right way.
Along those lines.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
I agree, with everyone. We are sort of between a rock and hard place. Adam checked in earlier because he knew he was going to be out, not able to make this meeting. And he said he is in favor of keeping the Warrior name if the boards of regents will allow it. And he said, if I were at the meeting, I would encourage the public to voice their outrage at our elected officials and the public media, echo the comments that they have thoughtfully provided to us via email, which we did have a bunch of emails come in. So it would compel the Board of Regents to change this board decision. So I just wanted to get that out there too, because that's what Adam had checked in on too. And I agree, we're sort of in a tough spot. I guess I did want to ask and I'm not asking for advice, I'm asking for process, is our first level to appeal to the Board of Regents or the commissioner themselves? Because like these other folks have expressed, we cannot afford a long legal battle. We're cutting teachers this year, so.
That's not a simple question to answer. I actually would depend on whether you pursued an appeal to the commissioner, whom I'm not sure has the authority to overturn a Board of Regents regulation, nor would she be inclined to, or it's quite frankly, a court challenge. It's more likely.
So money.
Yeah.
And as much as it pains me, I have also spent the last several weeks trying to advocate to get us more foundation aid because of an unrelated issue with that ridiculous debacle. And I can't, in good conscience, vote for a process that would cost additional funds and would cause a further reduction of programming for the students. As it stands, the money it's going to cost us to comply with this is going to result in a reduction of programming for the students. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? I apologize. Are we allowed to speak?
No.
There's going to be, right.
So,
I believe shortly.
yeah, there will be public comment after this, so you can come up and make your comments.
Let's appreciate it.
But there's blue sheets out there, fill one out,
I
and
didn't see
we can be,
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So we do need to pass a resolution by June. And as a board, is there more information that we need at this point in time so we can continue discussing it in May and then pass a resolution in June? I just want to make sure if there's other information that we need.
I mean, the only thing that you said it really quick, but were you saying that our only option is like a big protracted, like in the courts legal battle? Or like hoping the commissioner listens, or, and then like nothing in between? Is there, like, is the Board of Regents, is this committee, is there any, like, are they like in a basement with a locked door and the windows are shut? Like Gollum, is that, like, is that really the, like, it's either, it's like the big lawsuit or the, hey, commissioner, and then nothing in between? Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
So I'm not gonna give legal advice.
Right,
publicly,
don't give like, no.
But in terms of the process question,
Yeah.
as Jesse asked, you could go either way. You have no chance with the commissioner. So
Right.
the only challenge would be courts. And the other comment I'll make, because you mentioned funding, I try to bring ideas to the table as well. Funding is a related but separate issue. So in kind of Adam's comments, maybe think of it. Sure, you can go to your elected representatives about how you think about this regulation, and maybe they can politically do something because regulations are subordinate to laws, which are subordinate to the Constitution. So if the New York State Legislature and governor were to enact a law different than this, that would take precedence over the regulation. That's extremely unlikely in the current political environment. But funding, this is yet another unfunded mandate. I know you're familiar with those terms. So that's an avenue where citizens and boards could advocate to your elected representatives. Say, look, we don't like what the Board of Regents did, but to make us go through whatever the dollar number is an unfunded mandate. Why don't you, New York State Legislature, provide funding to the districts that have to go through that? I'm just planting a seed that's separate but related.
Is there any other thoughts from the board that would like to be shared?
I just feel like whatever we do, it's gonna cost a lot. Either way. And I think, asking the state to help us out with that would be a great idea, but they're not going to. They won't even give us enough state aid. So, to keep our programs and our teachers. So there's that.
Yeah, Jackie, I didn't say it was a slam dunk. I just said.
I think we should ask, worth an ask.
Yeah.
But, we just know how it is.
Is there gonna be another meeting for the public and vote on it, or no?
No, there's not going to be a public vote on this.
I don't think we have.
The regulation at issue, sir, does not envision or allow a public vote. It's a decision the board has to make.
There's a school that just had the Warrior name and Peter and one, and they're keeping their name, but not the logos in that one.
Great.
And how is
We
that
can-
not just
Can we,
do the same
can we
thing?
save this for public comment session?
Yeah, I would like him to speak on this.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I would like to hear what everyone has to say also, but we do have a process we need to follow. So, which actually brings us to the public comment part of this meeting, that is limited to topics on this meeting's agenda, which obviously this warrior name is. And those wishing to address the board are asked to complete the request form and submit it to the board clerk, which is Linda, they're sitting there, to be recognized by the board president. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and we'll see where this goes. Okay, I have 2 so far, so if you have another one, please bring it forward. You can either bring it to Linda or myself. And the first person I have, and I apologize if I ruin your name, is Rob Ducharme.
Close enough.
Well, please correct me.
Ducharme.
Sorry.
I came to speak about the logo and the name and what the state is doing. You got unelected representatives on the Board of Regents that are telling us, you members who we elected, to change the logo for the school. My kids have been taught the Warrior Way for as long as they've been in this district. And now we're gonna have to change that. What's next? We're gonna have the Snowball Way, Cream Puff Way? This is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We're teaching our kids to try to be strong and independent, and we're gonna bow down to the state unelected officials because we're worried about money. They're gonna take the money and make you spend it no matter what. Whether they're gonna use it for changing all the uniforms and the floors and everything else, the walls, the paint that you gotta put up to take down the Warrior stuff, or they're gonna take your funding. Pick your battles, stand up for our kids, stand up for our community. This is ridiculous. Y'all are elected officials. Act like it.
Thank you. The second one I have is Alicia Valenti. Alessia, sorry.
I'm Alessia, and I go to Algonquin Middle School. I don't see a good reason to change the sport name because warrior I don't see as offensive or mean to any of them or any culture. The word warrior just means a brave or experienced soldier or fighter. I don't think it connects between this and offensive word to use for a sport team name. I think we pretty much agree that it doesn't really mean anything offensive, but
Next I have Dan Swin.
Obviously, we know what side I'm on. Couple things. One, I would suggest you tell your daughter to continue to be a warrior. Whether there is a warrior Wednesday or not, by definition, the warrior is a player. Tell her to continue to be that. Secondly, again, warrior being a fighter, we're gonna stand here, we're gonna say we're afraid of them taking away our funding. I get it. I understand the money's gonna have to come from somewhere. All right, but as a warrior, and I'm totally with taking away the spear and the feather, get it, totally get it. Not here to offend indigenous groups by any way, shape, or form. But where does that end? Are we changing Algonquin? Are we changing Cayuga? Are we changing any other street name that has any connotation whatsoever to indigenous individuals? Warriors are fighters, that's what we are. And that's what I believe we should be. I understand it comes at a heavy price. I do. But somebody's got to lead that path. Sometimes that path needs to be made the first time through. We already had an individual, unfortunately, who had to leave, that said that there was precedent to fight to keep the warrior name. And if there is, I say we try to piggyback on that as much as possible. Now, I understand it's not going to be an easy fight, but what fight has a warrior ever gone through? That's been easy.
Thank you. Next I have Michelle, and you're gonna have to tell me how to say your last name.
Garfolo.
Garfolo, okay, thank you.
I just had a couple questions, actually. I don't have to come all the way up here, but we
No, you need to
have
have
the
the
time.
time.
Oh, okay. So my question is, how, and I don't know, you might have said it, I might have missed it. How many schools are being asked to change their either mascot or name logo?
I don't know that.
We don't know.
it's 55.
55? Okay.
I think I read that somewhere.
Okay. So you don't represent most of them then?
I represent some of them.
Some of them. So my thought would be how, I guess, is there a way that if there's this mass majority that is wanting to keep that, that we could interact and reach out with them and see their standing and kind of in mass numbers? I mean, would they realistically take all 55 schools funding? I don't know. It's just a question. I guess to ask more questions, to find out more information before we actually just say there's no hope and there's no way out. That's kind of, I'm gonna put that out there. So that's that.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Can I just like respond slightly on that? Is that okay? So unrelated to this topic, there are 233 districts currently being shortchanged by the Department of Ed in relation to the Foundation A formula. And I personally have reached out to several of those districts in hope that in a group we could convey to all of our elected officials to get more foundation aid, and getting zero responses. So I appreciate that idea because I was thinking along the same lines as it relates to the foundation aid. But I don't know if people are just worried about, getting quote unquote a target on their back or not. But there is not a lot of response about that, so.
All right. Is there any other people wishing to speak? I also wanted to acknowledge we received, I don't know, maybe 24 emails that the district clerk forwarded to all the board, and she made sure we all had the emails that came to us in regards to this topic. So we appreciate those too. Yeah.
I understood from Jeff, and maybe I misheard it, but it's not just funding that we are at risk of losing, we're also at risk of losing board members and as well as like board positions, paid ones, like superintendents.
Can you clarify that?
So, they could be removed as well. Is that understanding correct? It's not just the funding that they can take away. They can also remove members of the board.
Yes, well.
Looking for the mic.
All right. Well, more to come.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Just so the public understand, how much does our school rely on foundation aid? Like what percentage of our budget is foundation aid? If they were to take it from us, how much of a percent is that? Is it 10%, 15%? I think the public needs to
It's
hear
about-
how much it is, because if they take that foundation aid, it goes on the tax bill.
100%, not all state aid, not all particularly foundation.
So, well, all of state aid.
Whatever they're gonna take from us. What they're saying they're gonna take.
Even if it's all of state aid.
You can give me an
Yeah.
approximate, like
If you want to move on, Carrie will get that for you.
yeah,
Just for
I just think it's a very
a large
big-
number.
It's a very
Right,
large
'cause
number.
our two main revenue sources are the taxpayer and the state.
Right.
So
Right, so if the state aid goes
it's
away, it
it's
goes
close
back
to
to the
50.
taxpayer.
It's not 50-50, but we're talking a good chunk.
Tens of millions.
Well, while Carrie's looking
Probably
that
about
up,
40%.
along the lines of potentially board members being removed for failure to comply, what happens? The community has to have another election to replace them, or does the Board of Regents actually go as far as to appoint their own people or something like that? How does that? I'm just curious, like, how far does that go?
I mean,
Come to the mic.
Theoretically, going way out there to answer your question, first would be removal of one or more board members or other officials, as Doug pointed out, that could lead to a new election and/or could lead to the commissioner appointing a monitor to oversee the school district. That has occurred in some school districts for wholly unrelated reasons to this, for poor academic performance or financial mismanagement. The commissioner has the authority to appoint a monitor to oversee the district. So that, again, this is way out there in terms of theoretical.
One more quick thing. I realize that you don't have the numbers of what it would cost the district over a 2-year period. I would assume you would take that whole 2 years, just to spread out the spending if nothing else. But now my kids have been graduated for a while, so I'm not really sure, but I know you mentioned the helmets. I seem to recall like the track uniforms and maybe even the soccer uniform just said AP on them. I don't think they said Warrior or had any, I think they just said AP. Like, it's not everything, right?
It's not everything. I don't know. We honestly, we spent a good deal of time just trying to do the sphere, but we have not dug into the next level, so I don't know. But some of the uniforms that you just say, okay, new home uniforms, or uniforms, there's different, we have not gone too far into that, to be honest, all the other stuff going on. But we will.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
Carrie's got it.
Okay,
So foundation aid's about 28% of our overall revenues by itself. All of state aid's about 42, but just foundation aid, if they didn't touch other expense-based aids, and 28%, just under, it's $17.9 million.
Jesse, just, because I don't have the calendar in front of me and rarely know exactly what date it is. Do we have 2 more meetings before the deadline or one?
we have 2 meetings, one on May 8th and then June, I don't remember the date, but there's one in June. And at that June meeting, we would have to have
June 12th.
June 12th,
What's the deadline?
June 30th. So we could put in an extra meeting if we needed to. Not,
So I just was, I just,
by the.
I don't-
Yeah.
strangely, I don't have the June date committed for me. And so the idea of only having like potentially one more meeting was just nice.
No, we have 2 meetings, so. If you, board members think of any other information that you might need, then feel free to email and see what we can do on getting the information as we're working through this difficult position that we're in. Okay, that moves us to item number 5, the approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 17th, 2023 meeting? A motion by Ann, seconded by Megan. Discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. And could I have a motion to approve items number 6 and 7, the consent agendas for business items and personnel items? Megan, seconded by Sam. Discussion? Call it to a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. That brings us to item number 8, to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and CSCA regarding health insurance buyout language. Megan makes a motion, Samantha seconds. Discussion? All those in favor? And it passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we have several resolutions in regards to Questar. We have to go through each individual one separately. And just to note, there are 4 BOCES, the Board of Education for BOCES seats open and 4 candidates. So we know that going, moving forward. So the first would be to the 2023-24 Questar 3 election ballot for Miss Mary Daly. I need a motion to, Samantha, second by Megan, to vote on her candidacy. So all those, is there any discussion? Sorry. Okay, so all those in favor of Mary Daly? Passes unanimously. Thank you. For the 23-24 Questar 3 election ballot, Mr. Joseph Garland. Ann makes a motion. Jackie seconds. Discussion? All those for her? Yeah, sorry. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. I think that was racing, right, Doug? Okay, sorry.
I don't know that today.
Yeah. For the 23-24 Questar 3 election ballot, Mr. John C. Hill. Ann makes a motion, Megan seconds. Discussion?
I know him, so.
Okay, all those in favor? Thank you, passes unanimously. For the 23-24 Quest R3 election ballot, Mrs. Mary Yersta. Sorry, I am not doing well with names today. All right, Megan makes motion, Samantha seconds, discussion. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. The last item is the administrative, so the 2023-24 administrative budget ballot. So they sent us information on, and we are voting only on BOCE's administrative budget. So do I have a motion? And second by Megan, discussion?
What percentage has that gone up from last year? I read that
I looked that up.
in one of the articles, but was it more than the increase that we got in state aid? I don't know.
No.
Those two.
I want to say it was about 2%.
It was around there,
Was it?
I believe.
All right.
Our portion or?
Yeah, our portion was.
I'm looking at the budget right now. For the administration,
Yeah, it was.
yeah, it went up 3.83%.
Oh, it was greater. Our portion.
A little more.
Right, the way it's split up, so even if it goes up 2%, it's split up. based on
But their overall budget was around. And I wish they would stop calling out separately the retirement fund, because that's ancient history right now. Okay, any other questions, comments, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Doug opposes. Thank you. All right, this brings us to our next public comment session for anything. It does not have to be on the agenda. Does anyone? I have no blue sheets. Okay, board member reports. Jackie, you want to start us off?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out and express their opinion on tonight's topic, and for everybody that emailed the district. It is important to hear from everybody. Also, I just wanted to, when we were voting on the action items, I just wanted to thank Shirley Averill for her years in the district and on her congratulations on her retirement.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Jim and the administrators, the athletic department, for recognizing some of our past athletes, not just the ones that are in school today or just recently graduated, but the athletes that have been outstanding athletes from years ago. You recently put in the Hall of Fame a person that I remember very well, and Gary Wilson. And he was an outstanding basketball player in Connecticut. He led a rough life, and you put him in the Hall of Fame. I wish he was alive today to see that. There's other people in the community that recognize Kowalik and some of the other names that you put in the Hall of Fame. They've advocated for an updated Hall of Fame with those past athletes in it many years ago, and thank you for doing that. It's a good recognition for those people that have been warriors in the past. Okay. I also wanted to clear up a statement that I made about our curriculum, and the middle school and the elementary schools to go above and beyond teaching our children about indigenous natives, athletes, and people who were here long before us. They do an excellent job, and I think they go above the state curriculum right now from what I've seen. So I didn't mean an enhanced curriculum to necessarily bring our teachers up to speed, but to make sure that all of New York State then, if they have, all the schools in New York State have to abide by this regulation, that they should teach an enhanced curriculum about indigenous people, and specifically the indigenous people that lived right here in our community years ago. And I saw some indications of that in some of the elementary school classrooms, and our teachers are doing that. And I wish they did it all over the state for the indigenous people that lived in each of those particular communities. I just wanted to clear up that statement. It's not a criticism of what we're doing. That's my report. Thanks.
Thank you. Megan?
Thank you, Doug. I agree with that statement. And will clarify my prior statement is the intention and connotation related to the Board of Regents judgment and not a reflection on what we are doing or are not doing. So over the past several weeks and the past week respectively, I have continued to try and advocate on behalf of the district to try to move the needle as it relates to foundation aid. We have been asking the powers that be to increase the foundation aid hold harmless percentage closer to the rate of inflation, because a 3% increase is it's a slap in the face, frankly, but it is just not enough. To that end, I have had very productive conversations with Scott Bendett and with Jake Ashby himself. They are very supportive, but I would ask that members of the community reach out to both the members of your, I think everybody in here is probably Jake Ashby and Scott Bendett, with the exception of some folks in Wine and Skill, and across in Post and Kill would be John McDonald. I have spoken to John McDonald's office, but I have not been able to reach him specifically. I have left messages for the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor, and Jake Ashby's office and Scott Bendett both sent letters, written letters to the governor's office to draw attention to the need for additional aid for us. If anyone in the community would like to leave a message for the governor, her phone number is 518-474-8390. And I highly recommend that you call her office. You can leave a voicemail, which is effective. If you can get a staffer on the phone, that's even more effective. But I think that the governor's office is far too used to hearing accolades because people don't take the time to stand up and be heard. And I would love to have some help from you folks who deserve for your children to have appropriate funding. The state has, by way of placing money in the budget for addressing the foundation aid formula, admitted that it's broken. So while they are working on fixing it, it is only fair that they provide additional funding to the districts who don't have enough. Additional funding would save jobs, and it would save actual programming for your children who needed academic intervention services and actual classes and curriculum. So please, governor's office number, again, in case you missed it, is 518-474-8390. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Ann?
I just want to thank you, Jeff, for coming in and giving us some background and some good information. Not just us, but the public as well, to know what we're facing and just keeping us well informed as always. I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you to all the folks that came out, whether in support or actually stood up to the mic. I can imagine that. I know every time I speak into this, it's daunting. So I appreciate that you take the time to be in your thoughtfulness, to be involved in your community. It's really important that your voice is heard, and for all those folks that emailed as well. We're up here to represent our community, and it's important for us to hear from you, to know what's important to you and how you feel. So I want to just thank you for coming out and supporting the cause.
Thanks, Ann.
I can say the same thing. I just also wanted to, and left, no, it's probably good. I wanted to thank Alessia. I've known Alessia since she was in kindergarten, and she just did a great job. And I didn't start crying, and kudos to me for that. But that kid's a warrior, like that kid, to see her. She's such a sweet kid, and I appreciate that she's sweet, that she got up, and so, folks, thanks, Charlie. Just to piggyback on Megan, for me, I'm a PES parent, and there's a handful of us in PES, not me, by like 1.2 miles, but, in conversation with Scott and that, John McDonald has been around for a little bit of time, and he's got the seniority that Scott needs. But so reaching out to John, again, it's a slightly steeper hill to climb, but for those parents at PES, if you're listening, there's a good handful of us, so maybe, ask your friends, if they're just that 1 mile or 1.2 miles, kind of in that direction towards Troy, towards East Greenbush, if they can reach out as constituents. I got a response, not being a constituent of John McDonald. So I appreciate that, but at PES, we kind of can walk that line a little bit, and nudge in that direction as well, so that would be great. I'm just gonna bring it up because it's been like a frustrating situation. Just to bring the mood up, it's been, or maybe depending on the kid, it's been the last few weeks, is the NISMA festival. I call it a festival. I don't know why they call it a festival. And I hate acronyms. I think I'm getting it right. New York State School Music Association. This would help me if I screw it up.
You're good.
NISMA. They call it a festival, but it's like it's an assessment basically of your music skills, and the kids have to play excerpts and songs and scales and sight read, which is like crazy because I never learned it. So I just wanted to, the kids in the orchestras and the bands and all that, they have this crazy schedule, making sure they get their music education. And with the extra NISMA practice, it's like another like 3-dimensional chess game that the music teachers have to engage in. I just wanted to express my appreciation for what they're doing in these couple months to give the kids as rigorous of a music education, and again to have the bravery of getting up in front of a complete stranger who's judging you on your performance alone, is it's huge for those kids. And so my good luck to all some kids have already done it, so kids have it coming up, so good luck to all the kids, and thank you to the music teachers and administrators who support them, because there's a lot of rules. Talk about rules. There's a lot of rules. On that note, go home and listen to some Mozart.
You're so witty.
I totally meant to do that. Over to you, Jen.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to thank Megan for all your advocacy efforts in working and trying to get us a little bit more foundation aid for this year, and then hopefully continue to push them to actually reevaluate the state aid formula. So we really appreciate that. And thanks for the governor's office number. So, at this point, we do have need for executive session, and that is to have it for legal advice. So can I have a motion to adjourn the public session of the meeting and enter into executive session? Megan, seconded by Ann. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All the heads.